On the 26th of September 1995, then little-known development group by the name of Westwood Studios released Command & Conquer: Under the World, heralding a leap forward in a burgeoning new video game genre called real-time strategy. While not the first game in this new genre, Command & Conquer blazed a trail, leading the way forward, laying down the foundation for which many games in this genre would follow. Building off the successes and the development knowledge from Westwood's Dune 2, which many would argue is the first true real-time strategy game, Command & Conquer would go on to become a massive series of games, spanning multiple computer and console generations. Many of these games would go on to become highly successful, bringing great notoriety and fortune to the company. Along with rivals Blizzard Entertainment, their Warcraft and Starcraft series, the rivalry led to an amazing competition between the two, and gamers greatly benefit from this. However, after a few decades of releases, the quality of Command & Conquer games started to wane, ultimately culminating in the reveal of C&C Rivals, a game that many die-hard C&C fans did not want to see. However, this is not the end of Command & Conquer. In this video, we're going to go and talk about a true revival, a revival of a C&C in the form of its origin, the Command & Conquer Remastered Collection, and in particular, Tiberian Dawn. After the disastrous reveal and community backlash of C&C Rivals, EA went back to the drawing board, seeking to restore the faith that was completely lost at this point. EA surprised everyone with a shocking but low-key announcement via the C&C community forums. It was a direct message to fans, the die-hard fans who kept the game alive with outstanding support from mods, conversions, art, music, patching, and more. This was going to be a revival of the first two C&C games and their expansions, a revisiting of these two greats that would receive a remastered overhaul. Known as the Command & Conquer the Remastered Collection, both Command & Conquer, also known as Tiberian Dawn, and Command & Conquer Red Alert would be reworked in conjunction with various development teams, including the original staff who developed the game, Westwood Studios, now known as Petroglyph. In addition to Lemon Sky Studios and Electronic Arts, the teams were able to pair the original source code, adapting it to Petroglyph's GlyphX game engine, allowing the developers to fix bugs but bring a few minor quality of life improvements while maintaining the original feel and intent of the game as it were 25 years ago. Other areas like the game's iconic FMV cutscenes were also given a makeover too. Regretfully, the original video source recordings were never able to be located, so the dev teams had to come up with the next best solution: AI upscaling of the console version cutscenes, which were rendered in an MPEG, making the videos slightly easier to work with. This was able to help with the vast majority of in-game cutscenes from both games. However, there were a handful that were never done on the console versions, so the team had to work with the slightly worse VQA files. The inclusion of the console versions meant that all the extra content from those games would also make it into the remastered. This would not be the only major news though. The dev teams and C&C lead Jim Vasella made a point from the outset of this project that C&C would be community involved, leading to the formation of the Community Council, which would have real-time direct access to the development teams and the remastered games. These council members were influential members of the C&C community, streamers, modders, fan sites, and more. The very people who helped to keep the Command & Conquer franchise alive would have an avenue for direct feedback and ability to address issues while the game was in development. A move that certainly is uncharacteristic of modern EA. Diving further into the remasters, we see a level of detail that I really wish other game franchises would take the time and effort to do. First, looking at the visual improvements, we see Lemon Sky Studios step in and overhaul the existing graphics used in 1995, interpreting upscaling and rendering to 4K with those images, sometimes using concept art to gain a better understanding of the original art intentions. The remastered versions allowed you to swap graphical looks on a whim by simply pressing the spacebar, and the game has no slowdown or need to pause as this happens. The game's code was originally written in a form of C, and was adapted and put over Petroglyph's GlyphX game engine. Doing this allowed the developers to maintain the original game feel, while making the improvements and further enhancements behind the scenes to facilitate things like graphical fidelity swapping. However, the visuals were just the beginning of the improvements. Sound and music received a completely massive overhaul as well, with legendary game composer Frank Klepacki coming back to remaster and, in some cases, release new music that was either cut or hidden away from the initial releases. Frank, being the incredible musician, has always kept a duplicate musical setup at his home, and as he's had in the game studios, this allowed him to track down musical cuts, unused music, sound effects, and some original masters when making C&C 25 years ago. In some cases, using the original instruments to remake and re-record in modern formats. Or others, like bringing back Kia Hunsinger to reprise her role as Eva. Using the in-game menu settings, one can change, choose, and even mix which sound effects and music they would like, leading to a very high level of customization. The Remastered Collection has a crazy music library, over 7 hours of music alone, including the original compressed music, the remastered versions, and extra 20 songs performed in studio with the band the Tiberian Sons, a C&C band that was formed with Frank Klepacki to do remix takes on 20 of the most popular C&C tracks around. All of this can be customized in the game jukebox to the player's liking. This next area of the remastered is perhaps the most interesting or controversial, as it has to deal with the famous B-movie grade cutscenes that C&C has been well known for. A large effort was made early on in production of this remastered to find and locate the original source captures to all the video shoots that were made, but regretfully, none of them could be located. A large find of tapes were found upon searching. However, this turned out to give false hope, as the tapes contained the same compressed files that were located and shipped with the copies of the game. This ultimately led to the decision to use the console versions of all the cutscenes, as they were done in a slightly better, higher MPEG resolution at the time. Regretfully, not all the cutscenes were in the console version, so there were some video renders where they had to use the original compressed VQA files. Upscaling was achieved by using AI, and the end results were good enough. Without the original source captures from the footage taken back in '95, this was more or less the best they could do. Some in the community argued that EA should have attempted to reshoot all the scenes, but given the fact that some of those actors that had worked on the original C&C have sadly passed away, this would make things very difficult and even more costly. Others have complained in various places online, but I feel they do not see the whole picture or realize the difficulties of working with compressed files in the absence of source material. However, that is not to say this is all doom and gloom. An added bonus while looking for all this material was the location of outtakes, B-roll, and other unused footage that was taken on set. All this material was added as bonus content and is unlockable as you play through the game. The overall results of all these efforts are stunning and refreshing to any fan of C&C, as they can now play through the game as they truly see fit. And while that's all well and good, you might ask, how is the actual gameplay? Well, having played C&C for 25 years now, I can safely say that EA and Petroglyph got the gameplay to almost 100% accurate to the original. There were a couple changes here and there, many in the quality of life department, such as reworking the unit queuing or UI interfacing and quick commands to customizing more keyboard shortcuts. But other areas like unintentional bugs that were never addressed or fixed due to technical limitations. Some other exceptions were made when dealing with exploits like the infamous sandbag wall trick, which the original C&C game AI was never scripted to deal with, leading to players famously building a line of sandbag walls to the enemy base to wall them off. This exploit was intentionally left in due to devs feeling that it would change the experience that many C&C veterans were used to and had come to depend on some very difficult missions. The original C&C was difficult, and with the release of the Remastered Collection, EA and Petroglyph introduced a difficulty slider setting that had been used on later releases in installments of C&C. The initial hard difficulty was insane, and many players complained on the forums about how difficult to near impossible these hard setting missions were. Others were voicing their concerns about the game's normal difficulty, leading me to wonder if things had truly unchanged. So I investigated further and looked around. Comments were abound on the Steam community, Reddit, and other C&C forums, who were constantly discussing this, leading me to replay the original versions of Command & Conquer, from DOS to C&C Gold for Windows 95, and even the PlayStation and Sega Saturn versions. And I could find no real differences other than slight variations on how the AI would prioritize targets. In the original C&C, the AI would often path and prioritize the northernmost western target on the map. Knowing this, players could exploit, sandbag off, or even have throwaway units to keep more valuable units and structures alive. However, this is not the case with the Remastered Collection. The AI targeting has been slightly altered and will attack based more on unit value. This most notably being how the new AI uses airstrikes. Now, players have to deal with airstrikes that can no longer be baited out with having expendable units in the northmost western positions, leading to some late-game non-campaign missions being exceedingly difficult to complete due to these slight changes. Other balances or changes have been made, and even more recently since the release of the Remastered Collection, namely in multiplayer, but also in other areas like modding or map editing. But multiplayer was given some quality of life fixes, changes, and even added a proper skirmish mode with limited AI support for the original Tiberian Dawn. Many things that started to become standard with the next release in the series, Command & Conquer Red Alert. Controversies around multiplayer balance have been a hot forum topic, and the original depth of C&C multiplayer strategies have been laid to bear. Tiberian Dawn's limited tech tree, units, and base building were never really balanced multiplayer-wise as our modern-day RTSs, and while many people want an overhaul in this department, others do not. Recent compromises have been made, such as changing the build prerequisite for APCs to now require a repair-based structure, thus helping to limit the APC/engineer combo rush in the early game. Other changes like speeding up or changing the spawn position for the Nod transport plane have been discussed as well. Changes within the competitive multiplayer community have been voiced, and it will be interesting to see where the Remastered goes from here. The C&C community has always been strong, And remember, this is not the first time that EA and the community have worked together. Back in 2006, with the release of Command & Conquer: The First Decade, many issues arose with running Tiberian Dawn on then Windows XP and Windows Vista operating systems, making it difficult for players to enjoy and even play those games to begin with. Yet, the community stepped in with the help of prominent members like VK, CompFR, and Know Your Goods, who stepped in to support and allow everyone to continue to enjoy Command & Conquer on newer systems. Community projects continue to be supported, and with the release of the original source code to C&C, the community now has an amazing reference point to further enhance their projects. Some amazing projects like OpenRA allows C&C fans to play Red Alert and Tiberian Dawn in a more balanced multiplayer competitive setting, where others, like Dawn of the Tiberian Age, utilizes the Command & Conquer Tiberian Sun isometrically viewed voxel engine to render out a mix of original art graphics with the building structures, while adding more 3D-oriented voxel objects with the vehicles. Of course, this just scratches the surface, as there's so many great examples, like Twisted Insurrection that has its own alternative storyline, and more. The C&C community is truly in a good place. Lastly, we reflect on the past 25 years of Command & Conquer. We ultimately see a hope in the future with this release. Despite what EA has done in other areas of gaming, it seems that people who care deeply about this franchise have a say and the wherewithal to do what is necessary and right by the C&C fanbase. Rivals was a disaster, but the remastered is a love letter telling us what we can look forward to in something better. And with how well the remastered was done and received, I would say we have a bright C&C future.